The first gunshot split the morning air as Virginia Zeller's wagon shuddered to a halt on the dusty trail through Wyoming Territory in 1876. She hadn't expected to be alone in the wilderness, hadn't planned on her husband's betrayal, and certainly never imagined she would watch him ride away with another woman, taking nearly all their money and supplies, leaving her with nothing but a broken-down wagon and shattered dreams. Virginia collapsed to her knees in the middle of the trail, her calico dress billowing around her as tears streamed down her face. At 22, she had left everything behind in Philadelphia to follow Thomas West, believing his promises of a new life. Now those promises lay as barren as the landscape surrounding her. She had no idea how long she had been crying when the sound of approaching hoofbeats caused her to look up, hastily wiping her tear-stained cheeks. A tall figure on horseback emerged from the swirling dust, the silhouette of a cowboy atop a chestnut stallion. "Madam?" His deep voice called out before he had fully come into view. "You all right there?" Virginia straightened her shoulders, painfully aware of how vulnerable she appeared. "I'm fine," she lied, her voice cracking with emotion. The cowboy's face came into focus as he drew closer. He couldn't have been more than 26, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. He dismounted in one fluid motion, removing his hat to reveal sandy brown hair as he approached. "Forgive my boldness, madam, but you don't look fine to me." He glanced at her abandoned wagon, taking in the situation quickly. "Name's Adam Harding. I've got a ranch about 5 miles east of here." "Virginia Zeller," she replied, accepting his offered handkerchief. "My husband, former husband, I suppose, he left me here, took almost everything and rode off with a saloon girl from the last town." Adam's jaw tightened. That's no way to treat a lady. He glanced at the sky, noting the position of the sun. "Storm's coming in from the west. We need to get you somewhere safe before nightfall." "I have nowhere to go," Virginia admitted, the crushing reality of her situation settling over her like a heavy blanket. Adam looked at her directly, his gaze unwavering. "I promise you won't be left alone again, Mrs. Zeller, not while I have breath in my body." He extended his hand. "Will you trust me?" Virginia hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in his. Something in his steady gaze told her he was a man who kept his word. "Yes, Mr. Harding, I believe I will." By the time they reached Adam's modest ranch, the first fat raindrops were beginning to fall. The main house was simple but solid, built of sturdy logs with a stone chimney. A barn and corral stood nearby, along with a smaller cabin. "My foreman Curtis lives there," Adam explained, gesturing toward the cabin as he helped Virginia down from his horse. "I've got 2 other hands who bunk in the barn, but they're driving cattle to the north pasture until tomorrow." Virginia nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion as Adam led her into the house. The interior was surprisingly neat, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. "It's not much," he said, suddenly self-conscious, "but it's dry and warm." "It's wonderful," Virginia replied honestly. After the betrayal of that morning, simple honesty and kindness seemed like the greatest luxury imaginable. Adam busied himself with starting a fire while Virginia took in her surroundings. Bookshelves lined one wall, unexpected in a cowboy's home, filled with volumes of history, poetry, and practical guides to ranching. "You read a lot," she observed. Adam smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his serious face. "Winter nights get long out here. Mind keeps sharper with books." He stood, dusting his hands on his jeans. "I'll make us some coffee and something to eat. You're probably hungry." As they shared a simple meal of beans, bacon, and biscuits, Virginia found herself telling Adam her story, how she had met Thomas at a society function in Philadelphia, been swept off her feet by his charm and promises of adventure in the West. How they had married against her parents' wishes and headed west, only for Thomas to grow increasingly distant and irritable as the journey progressed. "This morning, he told me he never wanted the burden of a wife," she said quietly. "That Leela, that's the saloon girl, understood him better." Adam's eyes darkened with anger, but his voice remained gentle. Some men don't deserve the blessings they're given. Where will I go now? Virginia asked, more to herself than to him. You can stay here as long as you need, Adam said firmly. I've got a spare room. It's yours until you figure out what you want to do next. Virginia's eyes widened. But that's not proper. Adam held up his hand. Mrs. Jenkins comes by 3 times a week to help with cooking and cleaning. She's about 60 and has a tongue sharp enough to keep any man in line. Your reputation will be safe. His lips twitched into a small smile. Besides, proper doesn't mean much when the alternative is being stranded in Wyoming Territory. That night, as Virginia lay in the narrow bed in Adam's spare room, listening to the rain drumming on the roof, she felt something unexpected, a sense of peace. For the first time since leaving Philadelphia, she wasn't trying to please someone else or pretending to be something she wasn't. The next morning, Virginia woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. She quickly dressed in the same travel-worn dress, the only one she had left, and made her way to the kitchen where Adam was frying eggs. "Good morning," he said, tipping his head in greeting. "Thought you might sleep longer after everything you've been through." "I've always been an early riser," Virginia replied, suddenly self-conscious about her rumpled appearance. Adam seemed not to notice, sliding a plate of eggs and bacon in front of her. "I'm heading into town today to pick up supplies. Thought you might want to come along, get a few necessities." Virginia blushed. "I have very little money. Thomas took most of it." "Consider it a loan," Adam said firmly. "You can pay me back however you see fit when you're back on your feet." Virginia wanted to refuse his charity but recognized the practical necessity. "Thank you, Mr. Harding, that's very kind." "Adam," he corrected. "If you're staying under my roof, we might as well use first names." The town of Pine Creek was smaller than Virginia had expected. Just a single dusty street with wooden boardwalks fronting a general store, saloon, blacksmith, small hotel, and a few other establishments. As they rode in, Virginia was acutely aware of the curious glances directed their way. "Don't mind them," Adam said quietly. "News travels fast out here and strangers are rare. They'll lose interest soon enough." At the general store, Adam introduced Virginia to Mrs. Potter, the owner's wife, a plump woman with kind eyes who helped her select a few simple dresses, undergarments, and personal items while Adam saw to his own purchases. "You staying out at the Harding place?" Mrs. Potter asked casually as she wrapped Virginia's selections in brown paper. "For the time being," Virginia replied cautiously. Mrs. Potter nodded. "Adam's a good man, lost his parents to fever 5 years back, been running that ranch alone ever since. Does well considering." Before Virginia could respond, the store's door swung open with a bang and a tall man with a star pinned to his vest strode in. "Harding," he greeted Adam with a nod. "Heard you might have picked up a passenger yesterday." "Sheriff Wilson," Adam acknowledged. "This is Mrs. Virginia Zeller. Her husband abandoned her on the trail yesterday. I offered her shelter until she decides her next move." Sheriff Wilson's shrewd eyes assessed Virginia. "Sorry for your troubles, madam. If you're looking to file any charges against your husband, no," Virginia interrupted quickly. "I just want to move forward," the sheriff nodded. "Fair enough. You should know a man fitting your husband's description was in the saloon 2 towns over last night bragging about heading to California. Got into a fight over cards and pulled a knife. He's cooling his heels in the jail there now." Virginia felt a strange detachment hearing about Thomas. It was as if he belonged to another life, one that was already growing distant. "Thank you for telling me, Sheriff," she said politely, "but that has nothing to do with me anymore." As they rode back to the ranch, Virginia found herself studying Adam's profile against the setting sun. He wasn't classically handsome like Thomas, but there was something compelling about his quiet strength. "Why are you helping me?" she asked suddenly. Adam was silent for a long moment. "My mother was left alone with me when I was just a baby. My father went looking for gold and never came back. A rancher and his wife took us in, gave us a home, taught me everything I know." He looked at her directly. I'm just passing on what was given to me." Over the next few weeks, Virginia found herself settling into life at the ranch. Mrs. Jenkins, the housekeeper Adam had mentioned, was indeed formidable but took Virginia under her wing, teaching her about cooking on a wood stove and managing a household in the West. "City girls usually have a hard time adjusting," Mrs. Jenkins observed one day as they kneaded bread dough together. "But you've got grit, I'll give you that." Virginia smiled, realizing she was actually enjoying the physical work. In Philadelphia, she had never been allowed near the kitchen. Here, there was satisfaction in creating something with her own hands. "Adam seems pleased with the changes," Mrs. Jenkins continued casually. "Never seen him eat so well or the house look so nice." Virginia felt her cheeks warm. She had noticed how Adam's eyes followed her sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking. She'd caught herself doing the same, admiring the way he moved with such confidence, how gentle he was with his horses, how he always seemed to consider his words before speaking. One evening in late September, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple, Adam broke their comfortable silence. "Winter will be here soon," he said. "First snow usually comes by mid-October." Virginia nodded, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "I've been thinking about what I should do next." Adam's hands stilled on the piece of leather he was working. "And what have you decided?" "I received a letter from my parents yesterday," Virginia said. "They've offered to send money for my passage back to Philadelphia." Adam's face remained carefully neutral. "I see." "I wrote to tell them I'm not coming back," Virginia continued. "This is my home now. If you'll still have me, I'd like to stay and help with the ranch." The hope that flashed across Adam's face before he could mask, it made Virginia's heart beat faster. "You'd be welcome," he said carefully, "but you should know ranch life isn't easy, especially in winter. It's not what you're used to." "What I was used to made me miserable," Virginia said firmly. "Here I feel useful, needed." She hesitated, gathering her courage. "Appreciated." Adam set aside his leather work and turned to face her fully. "You are all those things and more, Virginia, but I need to be honest with you. Having you here these past weeks has made me realize how lonely I was before. I find myself." He paused, struggling for words. "I find myself caring for you in a way that goes beyond friendship or duty." Virginia felt warmth spread through her chest despite the cooling evening air. "I feel the same," she admitted quietly. Adam reached for her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "I don't want to rush you. You've been through a terrible ordeal, and the last thing you need is another man making demands." "You're nothing like Thomas," Virginia said firmly. "He made promises he never intended to keep. You keep promises you never even had to make." The first snow came earlier than expected, a swirling white curtain that transformed the landscape overnight. Virginia woke to a world of white, rushing to the window in childlike wonder. In Philadelphia, snow had been an inconvenience, quickly turning gray and slushy. Here it sparkled like diamonds under the morning sun. Adam found her standing on the porch, wrapped in a heavy blanket, her breath making clouds in the frigid air. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, coming to stand beside her. "It's magical," Virginia breathed. "Like the world has been made new." "That's what I love about winter," Adam said. "It covers everything, gives us a fresh start every year." Virginia turned to look at him, struck by the poetry of his thought. In that moment, with snowflakes catching in his eyelashes and the morning light softening his features, she realized she had fallen completely in love with him. Without overthinking, she rose on tiptoe and pressed a gentle kiss to his lips. Adam froze for an instant before his arms came around her, pulling her closer as he deepened the kiss. When they finally separated, both breathless, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since the day I found you on the trail." Virginia smiled. "What took you so long, Cowboy?" As winter settled over the ranch, Adam and Virginia's relationship blossomed in the quiet intimacy of long evenings by the fire. They read to each other from Adam's books, played chess, and talked for hours about their lives, dreams, and hopes for the future. One night in December, as a blizzard howled outside, Adam placed a small wooden box in Virginia's hands. "I made this for you," he said, uncharacteristically nervous. Inside the box, nestled in a scrap of velvet, was a ring. The band was silver, delicately engraved with a pattern of wildflowers. "It was my mother's," Adam explained. "I had the blacksmith help me resize it." Virginia looked up at him, her heart pounding. "Adam," he took her hands in his eyes serious. "I know it's only been a few months, and I'd understand if you want to wait, but I love you, Virginia. I think I've loved you since the moment I saw you on that trail, looking so brave despite everything. I'm asking if you'd do me the honor of becoming my wife." Tears filled Virginia's eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, with all my heart." They were married on Christmas Day in the ranch house, decorated with pine boughs and candles. Sheriff Wilson performed the ceremony, while Mrs. Jenkins, Curtis, and the other ranch hands served as witnesses. It was nothing like the elaborate society wedding Virginia had once dreamed of, but as she spoke her vows to Adam, she couldn't imagine anything more perfect. That night, as snow blanketed the world outside, Adam and Virginia discovered each other as husband and wife, their passion tempered by tenderness as they learned the language of each other's bodies. "I love you," Adam whispered against her skin. "And I promise I'll never leave you, Virginia." Never. Spring came to Wyoming with a sudden rush of green, transforming the ranch almost overnight. Virginia watched from the porch as Adam worked with a new colt in the corral, marveling at how her life had changed in less than a year. "You're looking mighty pleased with yourself, Mrs. Harding," Mrs. Jenkins observed, joining her on the porch. Virginia smiled, resting her hand on her still flat stomach. "I have news to share with Adam tonight." Mrs. Jenkins's shrewd eyes widened. "Land's sakes, child, that's wonderful news. That man's going to be over the moon." That evening, after dinner, Virginia took Adam's hand and led him to the porch swing. "I have something to tell you," she said, suddenly nervous. Adam's brow furrowed with concern. "Is everything all right?" Virginia took a deep breath. "I'm going to have a baby. In late October, Dr. Miller thinks." Adam stared at her in stunned silence before a smile spread across his face, so wide and joyful it transformed him. "A baby, we're having a baby." Virginia nodded, laughing as Adam swept her into his arms, spinning her around in delight before setting her down carefully. "Are you happy?" she asked, though his reaction left little doubt. "Happy doesn't begin to describe it," Adam said, placing his hand gently over her stomach. "I love you so much, Virginia, both of you." Summer brought scorching heat and long days of ranch work. Despite her advancing pregnancy, Virginia insisted on doing her share, though Adam was vigilant about ensuring she didn't overexert herself. In late July, as they sat on the porch enjoying a rare evening breeze, a cloud of dust on the horizon signaled an approaching rider. Adam stood, shading his eyes. "We're not expecting anyone," he said, his hand moving instinctively to the rifle leaning against the wall. As the rider drew closer, Virginia gasped in recognition. "It's Thomas." Adam's expression hardened. "Stay here," he said, moving to stand protectively in front of her. Thomas Zeller looked considerably worse for wear as he dismounted. His once fine clothes were tattered, his face weathered and marked with a new scar across his cheek. "Virginia," he called out, ignoring Adam's imposing presence, "I've come to take you back." Virginia moved to stand beside Adam, her hand firmly in his. "I'm not yours to take any more, Thomas. I have a new life now." Thomas's gaze flicked between them, lingering on Virginia's pregnant form. "I see you didn't waste time finding a replacement," he sneered. Adam stepped forward. "You lost any right to her when you abandoned her on that trail. Virginia is my wife now, and you're trespassing on our property." Thomas's hand twitched toward his holster. "I heard you struck it rich with that new silver claim. Figured that's what changed my dear wife's mind about roughing it out west." Virginia frowned in confusion. "Silver claim? What are you talking about?" "Don't play innocent," Thomas spat. The whole territory's talking about how Adam Harding struck the motherlode in his north pasture. Adam's expression remained impassive. There's silver on my land, yes, found it last winter. But Virginia didn't know anything about it until just now. Virginia turned to Adam in surprise. You never told me. It didn't seem important, Adam said simply. The ranch was always enough for me. Now it just means our child will have a more secure future. Thomas laughed bitterly. Always the noble cowboy. Well, I've got papers that say half of what's Virginia's is legally mine. We never properly divorced. That's not true. Sheriff Wilson's voice came from behind them as he rode up, having followed Thomas from town. Mrs. Harding received her divorce decree 4 months ago. I have the documentation right here. He patted his vest pocket. And I heard about your plans to cause trouble at the saloon last night, Zeller. Thought I'd better ride out and make sure everything stays peaceful. Thomas's face contorted with rage. This isn't over, he growled, but the fight seemed to drain out of him as he looked at Virginia's resolute expression. It is over, Virginia said calmly. It was over the moment you left me on that trail. Now please go and don't come back. After Thomas had ridden away, escorted by Sheriff Wilson, Virginia turned to Adam. Why didn't you tell me about the silver? Adam shrugged, looking embarrassed. I didn't want it to change anything between us. You chose this life when all I had was this ranch in my hands. That meant everything to me. Virginia reached up to touch his face. Oh, Adam, the silver doesn't matter to me. You saved me in ways that have nothing to do with money. You gave me a home, a purpose, your heart. Adam pulled her close, his hand resting protectively over their unborn child. And you gave me a family, everything I've ever wanted. On a crisp October morning, just as the first snow began to dust the mountains, Virginia gave birth to a daughter with Adam's storm-gray eyes and her own auburn hair. They named her Hope, a testament to the feeling that had carried them both through their darkest times. As Virginia held their daughter while Adam sat beside her on the bed, his arm around her shoulders, she reflected on how differently her western journey had turned out from what she had expected. A year ago today, she said softly, I was crying on a trail, thinking my life was over. Adam kissed her temple. And I was a lonely rancher who had no idea his whole world was waiting for him just down the road. Virginia leaned into his strength. Thank you for stopping that day. For promising never to leave. Best promise I ever made, Adam said, gently touching their daughter's tiny hand as it curled around his finger. And one I'll keep renewing every day for the rest of our lives. Outside, the first real snow of winter began falling in earnest, covering the ranch in a blanket of white, offering the promise of renewal and the blessing of beginnings just as it had the year before when Virginia had first discovered love in the arms of her cowboy. 5 years later, as Virginia stood on the porch of their expanded ranch house watching Adam teaching their son Andrew to ride his first pony while Hope chattered excitedly beside them, she marveled at the fullness of her heart. The silver mine had brought them material comfort, but it was the love they shared that made their life rich beyond measure. Come join us, Mama, Hope called, her auburn braids flying as she jumped up and down. Virginia smiled, resting her hand on her stomach where their third child had just begun to make its presence known. Some promises, she thought as she walked toward her family, were meant to last forever like the one a cowboy had made to a crying woman on a dusty trail, changing both their lives in ways neither could have imagined.